No, I'm pressed it. Yeah, I pressed it. From here on down. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a seat, everybody. You haven't signed the materials, but you can do that.
No, I don't.
Do that at another time. Dr. Bowles, you come on up.
All right, I'll follow you.
No. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming. This is a nice crowd on a beautiful day. I'm certainly glad everybody can come and be a part of our Bulger Sports Lecture Series. Dr. William Bulger and his daughter Ann are here. Would you stand up, please, and be recognized by our group? It's in Dr. Bulger's wife's and Anna's mom's honor that we hold this series. She was a long-time faculty member, department chair, coach, advisor, confidant to many young men and women over many, many years. And it certainly is a pleasure to be given the opportunity to honor her. I'd also like to thank Dr. Jan Helfrich for her assistance in making this happen. And Rick Smith is over at the baseball game, but he was a big help in making all of this possible also. And better not forget Dr. Kopp, the Dean of the College of Health Professions, who also kicked in a little fun to make this whole thing come off. So Evan Weiner is here to talk to us. He has so many credits. I'm not even going to start trying to mention them, but we're passing around a blue flyer, and those blue flyers should keep coming. And we should, you just read that. When he gets to some boring parts, just go ahead and read that, and that'll take care of things. But Evan, welcome to Central Michigan University, and we're looking forward to hearing about you.
Thank you, Dr. Schneider, and everybody else who's responsible for bringing me here. My name is Evan Weiner, and I have been in radio, TV. I work now with John Madden, football coach, Fox Radio, actually, Fox TV. We do the radio side. And I do a lot of other things. I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I am sort of an investigative radio/newspaper reporter. And I'm going to talk a little bit about violence. And I come out of a TV, radio, newspaper background. And being that I'm out of a newspaper, radio, TV background, the number one thing in news today is violence. And in the television news business, there's an axiom: if it bleeds, it leads. The goriest story is always first. Now, you're probably saying, how does this affect sports? Well, in sports, when the Nashville Predators became a National Hockey League team last summer, when they opened shop, they began selling tickets, and there was a debate. Well, how are we going to go about selling tickets? We're in a non-traditional hockey area, and what are we going to do? So the owner of the team, Craig Leopold, got together with his management group, people like you, or people that you want to be at some point, planners. And what they came up with was this. This is going to be my conscious decision on how to sell my hockey team in my market. NASCAR is big in Nashville. Auto racing is big in Nashville. So the marketing staff, and again, some of you are going to be marketers at some point, decided to link auto racing with hockey. It's pretty simple. They began showing video clips of auto racing and car crashes. And they did it around the Nashville area in advertising venues. They had auto racers crashing into walls, and they coupled it with hockey collisions on the same tape along the boards. And they said, look, this is what happens in auto racing, and this is what happens in hockey. If you like collisions, you're going to like hockey because there's similar wreckage. When the Dallas Stars opened for business in Texas in 1993, The club's general manager, Bob Gainey, who is a great defensive hockey player, who played pretty clean during his days, never got into any fights. He didn't know whether or not he should have a good skating team for Dallas or one that featured some fighters. He nervously waited for the first preseason game in September 1993, and he wondered about their reception in their new home. Well, barely a minute into the game, Shane Churler got into a fight. And Shane Churler, for those of you who don't know anything about hockey, is a goof. His whole purpose in hockey is to fight. That's his only purpose, to take on the other team's tough guy. Anyway, he was the resident tough guy. He got into a fight. Fans howled. They started screaming out his name, Churler, Churler, Churler. He became the first star. Now, Gainey knew which way he was going to build the team. He was going to have a tough guy go with his skilled players. This year, his tough guy is Pat Verbeek, who happens to have some skill. But you know, Gainey learned something, and a lot of people knew it down in Texas. He was in football country, and he should have known what they knew in Nashville. The locals may not know anything about hockey, but they certainly know about fighting. And now, if you look at the Nashville Predators roster, you'll see Patrick Cote, Danny Lambert, and they're the two most popular players in Nashville. They're the resident tough guys for the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators knew what Bob Gainey didn't know in the South. And they knew what every other hockey operator in the South knows. You need to have fights. Fights sell. Violence sells. Every night on ESPN, every night on Fox Sports, you'll see attitude. CNN, you'll see an attitude. You'll see youngish TV announcers, guys in their 20s, telling jokes about fights in hockey. Basketball players flinging basketballs at other players. Baseball brushback pitches, all leading to fights. In football, in-your-face dances. Welcome to the 1990s. This is how people sell sports. But if you think this is new, you're wrong. You go back about 40 years. How many of you have heard of Walter Cronkite? Okay, I don't have to explain who Walter Cronkite is to anybody, do I? Walter Cronkite maybe single-handedly turned America against the Vietnam War in the 1960s. But anyway, go back about 40 years and you'll see an artifact. And it's rarely seen these days. You know, ESPN or Classic Sports Networks might show it, but then again, they might not. It's a television show, and it's called The Violent World of Sam Huff. How many people have heard of Sam Huff? Sam Huff was a football player with the New York Giants in the 1950s and 1960s. We'll get to Sam in a second. The Violent World of Sam Huff featured Walter Cronkite reporting. Now, Walter Cronkite, as I said, may have changed the country's views on Vietnam with the CBS special report about 1967-68, saying that we couldn't win this war. But back in 1961, before he got the title of America's Most Trusted Newsman, he was a CBS newsman and an anchor, and he was a very respected anchor. Sam Huff now works for the Washington Redskins on their radio network, and he's a Marriott hotel executive. But back in the 1950s and 1960s, Sam Huff was a middle linebacker on a very good New York Giant football team. Giants won the NFL championship in 1956. They lost in championship games in 1958 to Baltimore in the so-called greatest game ever played, an overtime championship game at Yankee Stadium. Giants also lost to the Colts in 59. They lost to Green Bay in 61, 62. In Chicago in 1963. Huff was a very good linebacker. He happened to play in the nation's top media market. He wasn't the equal of Detroit's Joe Schmidt, who played only in the Thanksgiving game, which was nationally televised, or even Chicago's Bill George, who played with an average Chicago team that eventually won the championship. Huff was a Giant, and his teammates included the very handsome Frank Gifford, who was making commercials in those days. And he was making movies. The commercials aren't memorable, the movies aren't memorable, but I think everybody knows Frank Gifford now. The Giants had radio shows. In fact, Pat Summerall was a kicker on that team and happened to answer a telephone after taking a shower. Somebody heard his voice on the other end, hired him on radio immediately, and I think most of you people know who Pat Summerall is. That's how he got his start in radio and TV. In 1961, CBS acquired the rights to the National Football League. They were the first network contract. Before that, teams like the Washington Redskins televised their games in the Southeast, New York Giants in the North, Chicago Bears in the Midwest, Detroit Lions around here. They decided to group their football together on one network. So they got this partner, CBS, a new television partner, and the network decided to do something. They were going to parlay the nature of football, the violent nature of football, and their new partnership with the primetime special. Walter Cronkite was enlisted to host the show, which glorified Puff's on-field violent life. It was a primetime special, something very unheard of in those days. And it was a one-of-a-kind promotional vehicle. They were going to sell football on CBS. And it was going to sell not just football, but the violent aspect of football. The very name, The Violent World of Sam Huff. And you saw collisions with Jimmy Brown. And you heard those collisions. That's how they sold football in 1961 on the CBS television network. And they were going to a national primetime audience. And in those days, CBS and NBC were the kings. They commanded most of the TV viewership. And CBS, NBC, and ABC commanded 90% of the television market. This is almost 2 decades prior to the establishment of ESPN and other 24-hour-a-day sports media. Sports teams don't sell violent stuff. They allow their partners to do it. The so-called family-oriented Walt Disney Company, they own ABC and ESPN. They're the rights holders for the National Football League. Now, the games that you see every Sunday and every Monday night and Thursday night and Saturday and whenever else they put games on are basically a 3-hour commercial for the sports industry, whether it be football, baseball, hockey, basketball, or the Olympics. Sports teams do not dissuade people from acting poorly at games. In fact, their partners actually encourage rowdy behavior at games. And I'll give you a prime example of that. Monday Night Football. Now, how many people watch Monday Night Football? Almost all of you. How many people know the song that goes into Monday Night Football? The TV show utilizes the singer Hank Williams Jr., who shouts, more than sings, "Are you ready for football?" And then he is joined by all his rowdy friends. Look, ABC makes no denying this. Monday Night Football is entertainment first. Ben Sosa's Howard Cosell and Don Meredith traded insults in 1970. And that was one of the major reasons people watched, to see what Don Meredith was going to say to Howard Cosell, and see what Cosell would say back to Don Meredith. It was 29 years ago. Things have changed in 29 years. So the violence and the insults were used to counter what CBS was doing on Monday nights, which was Gunsmoke, a Western, and Lucille Ball, a comedy. On NBC, there was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and the Movie of the Week. The formula has worked for years and years and years. Sell Howard, sell Don, sell the insults, sell the play on the field. Actually, don't sell the play on the field. That's insignificant compared to everything else that was going on. But they took it to a new level, using actual rowdyism by using Hank Williams' song. Now, Monday Night Football brings out the worst in people. And I think if you're going to be planners for the future, you're going to have to look at this carefully. In Foxborough, Massachusetts, where the New England Patriots played, for years they did not have Monday Night Football there. The city council or the local council outlawed Monday Night Football. And it became a real sideshow in Foxborough, and I'll give you the example. In the early 1980s, a man suffered a heart attack in the stands. The emergency medical personnel, the paramedics, got to the man. As they got there, they were showered by urine. People in the upper stands were urinating on the paramedics as they were working on this man who had a heart attack. After that, Foxborough said, we've had enough Monday Night Football. The Patriots just have come back to Monday Night Football. They could not control the drunks who spent most of the evening drinking in the parking lots and then coming into the stadium and drinking. Now, today, stadiums cut off sales of beer in the 7th inning or the 3rd quarter of football games, basketball games, or the 2nd period of hockey games. But, you know, teams won't dissuade fans from drinking because beer brings in money. It's a major promotional vehicle for every sport team, from college to the New York Yankees. There's a major money in beer sales and beer commercials for the teams and for athletes. Now, if you remember in the early 1980s, well, some of you weren't born in the early 1980s. So I will tell you, in the early 1980s, Miller Lite had a campaign where they used former athletes, like Whitey Ford, who talked about his drinking during his career. Whitey Ford, Bubba Smith, my boss, John Manning. Teams don't spend money promoting their games. They let other people spend money. Now, you can actually make an argument that in basketball they did not spend, or the NBA did not use violence to sell. Nike, and we know Nike's problems in Asia and Malaysia and places like that as far as making shoes, but Nike made Michael Jordan. not the NBA. And they made him through a series of clever spots in the 1980s. Nike did more to promote Michael's career than the NBA publicity machine could. Nike made Mike real. Gatorade also wanted you to be like Mike. So between Gatorade and Nike, you were going to be just like Michael Jordan. The NBA had nothing to do with it. David Stern and his marketeers jumped on it, and the NBA tries to rewrite history. They talk about revisionist history, that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird brought the league back. Well, that's partly true, but in 1983, and I was there, they were about ready to lop off 7 of their 23 teams. The League and the Players Association agreed to a salary cap, drug testing, and to work together to market the league. Now, Bird and Magic were in the finals every year, or you would think they were in the finals every year, but as we talked with Dr. Schneider as we got in here, Philadelphia 76ers won one of those championships in 1983. So you had Magic and Bird playing almost every year, but you also had Nike and Gatorade and Michael Jordan, and that was more powerful than any Laker-Celtic series could ever be. Now you might ask, why does sports use violence as a sales tool? Well, I don't know. It probably dates back to the days of the Christians and the lions in the Colosseum when the Romans packed the joint. They wanted to see some action. Or maybe the advent of the first Greek Olympics. You know, the original Olympics were staged because Greek soldiers had nothing to do between wars, so they were thrown into sports. Today, kids get indoctrinated into winning and losing by coaches who start working with children at the age of 5. It's ingrained on every level, through high school and college, and for the fortunate few, the pros. And for an even smaller minority, the big show, the big leagues. Kids and sports events have escalated into wars. And the networks, like the so-called family-oriented Disney-owned ABC or ESPN, have no problems in showing the tears of a 12-year-old who is, for exploitation purposes, who has just given up a game-winning home run in the Little League World Series. Now, that's a director's delight, the thrill of winning, the agony of defeat. You know, they don't think about the child. Last summer in Williamsport, I forgot who it was, but tears were streaming down his face. A 12-year-old child who just gave up a game-winning home run. But you know, for a director or producer of a TV show, hey, that's real great stuff. Let's make sure we get panned in and see those tears coming down. It's cruel. That's a cruel thing to do to a 12-year-old. But they're essentially selling the game of baseball through emotion. You can't do that to a 12-year-old, except if you're on radio, except if you're on TV. That's good TV. It may not be good for the psyche of your kid, but it's good TV. You know, also today, you know, there's an expression, a good fan, a euphemism for a good fan is not, the good fan is not what it used to be. A guy who would get up and applaud an opposing player for a good play. A good fan today is not a civil person who supports good sportsmanship. Now, a good fan is like the people who frequent the right field bleachers at Yankee Stadium, where opposing right fielders are pelted with coins, bottles, and batteries. And the battery of choice is the Ever-Ready Energizer. You can go out to Yankee Stadium after a game in right field and pick up any kind of battery you want, and generally you'll find the Energizer out there. English soccer crowds are notorious for rowdyism, also hooliganism. But this isn't anything new. This hasn't happened just in the 1990s. Back in 1934, not far from here, during the World Series, the St. Louis Cardinals outfielder Joe Medwick was ordered off the field by Commissioner Landis because the Detroit Tiger fans during the World Series in 1994 were throwing things at him in the outfield. Incidentally, if you don't think baseball tried to sell violence then, Cardinals were safely ahead in that game, and they were billed as the Gas House Gang, the toughest players in the major leagues in those days. ESPN uses violence to promote SportsCenter. How many so-called funny personal commercials with athletes promote rowdyism? Have you seen the latest Mark McGwire ESPN commercial? Have any of you seen it? Well, apparently Mark McGwire takes his baseball bat and starts mindlessly bashing a computer to break up the computer. Now, in ESPN's mind, this is, well, he's having a little fun, you know, causing some vandalism because he's showing you what it is to hit a home run. But this is ESPN's way of life. You know, ESPN promotes violence. They promote violence in hockey. They promote violence in baseball. They promote violence in football. They promote violence, and they make no bones about it. They promote their X Games. which are some violent, intended games where people can get hurt. So instead of promoting McGwire, who hits 70 home runs, they promote him bashing a computer. But you know what? McGwire was highly uncooperative in Oakland. Maybe that was his real personality, because when he was with Oakland, he was boorish. He wouldn't talk to you. He was sullen. He would not cooperate while he was with Oakland. Last year, Mark McGwire turned over a new leaf, as did Cal Ripken when he was about ready to break Lou Gehrig's record. They became nice guys, sellable. Baseball players in general in marketing are boorish. Their behavior towards the media, in general, the public, makes their Q ratings. The Q ratings are what advertisers take to see how popular people are. It makes their Q ratings for popularity low. And baseball players won't get an advertisement like, say, Steve Young might. Steve Young's a nice guy, or so he's portrayed as a nice guy. Fox and ESPN promote violence. In hockey, there's one particular spot on Fox broadcast. New York Islanders defenseman Richie Pilon, who's a tough hockey player, is shattered into pieces after a check. He just shatters, and his eyeballs pop out like Jim Carrey in one of the movies. Violent collisions in all sports are the norm, not the exception. They're all in pursuit of the 18 to 34 male demographic, because advertisers think that that has, or those people will be the consumers of tomorrow. So if they bombard them with commercials today, your age, kids your age, not women, men. So women, you don't have to listen to that, because advertisers don't think of you in terms of sports. They think 18 to 34-year-old men go out and buy stuff, and they're going to hook them for life. So that is the primary audience. So this is a demographic that's accustomed to violence in society, rallyism in games. And the teams know it. Leagues encourage teams to redesign uniforms and logos, and if the color black is included, all the better. Gang members use team colors for identification purposes, and it seems the marketing of color schemes and logos take precedent over bringing players in. I don't know if any of you have heard of my friend Laura Stamp. She's a skating instructor. She has taught over 300 National Hockey League players power skating, and is responsible for Luke Robitaille being in the NHL, and Steve Deschain and a few others in the NHL, and responsible for Brett Lindros not being in the NHL because Brett decided not to listen to her and learn how to skate. She was with the Los Angeles Kings. She has been in hockey for nearly 3 decades, teaching kids how to skate, pros how to skate. She's appalled by the escalation of violence in hockey, which she has documented, and you're going to get a handout sheet talking about some of the violence in hockey. And it starts at the lowest levels. It starts at 4-year-old levels, where coaches encourage their 4-year-olds to go out and kill. 4-year-olds to go out and kill and win at all costs at the age of 4. Now, it's one thing to market the violent nature of boxing, or the earth-set violence of professional wrestling, which is choreographed and scripted right down to a pratfall. It's another thing to market sports violence at 5-year-old hockey players, but coaches do. I coach, I know. I coach 13-year-olds now. I coached 5-year-olds. I know what coaches do with 5-year-old hockey players. A couple of Novembers ago, Laura and I had lunch, and we were talking about trends in sports and how come somebody like Bill Romanowski, the Denver Broncos linebacker, might get fined for putting a late hit on somebody and breaking Terry Collins' jaw. The NFL will fine him, but they won't suspend him. And we talked about people like Romanowski and Kevin Gogan, who was with the San Francisco 49ers and became a free agent and is elsewhere. I believe he signed with Miami. And they're celebrated for being dirty players. Sports Illustrated came out last year with a big article about people like Gogan and Romanowski being great because they were dirty players. You got a guy like Conrad Dobler. I'm not sure how many of you people have heard of Dobler. He played in the 70s and 80s. He was a mediocre lineman who started a lot of fights, used to kick people. Really dirty player. Used to bite fingers in defensive linemen. But you know what? He parlayed his infamy into a long-term NFL career and became an author, made money being a dirty football player. See, if the NFL really wanted to cleanse itself of violence, they could suspend Romanowski and make it mean it. They could suspend him for 12 games and take his money. They could ignore Lawrence Phillips or Christian Peter. They're 2 players who have backgrounds, police backgrounds. Phillips was drafted as a 6th player overall by the St. Louis Rams a few years ago, and Peter by the New England Patriots. Both assaulted women while they were at University of Nebraska. The Patriot owner, Robert Kraft, did something highly unusual in sports. He overruled Bill Parcells in his football department and fired Christian Peter, who was convicted of a rape charge. Peter has been rehabilitated and now is a New York Giant. But if draconian rules don't work, the unions won't let people like Romanowski get suspended. They won't let Peter get suspended. The unions have too much power. The owners have given them the power because they want players. Arbitrators side with unions or players association because contract language is too often vague. Teams loathe giving up players who can actually help them win some games. So players generally get light sentences for fights on the field or taking drugs. Hockey's put some teeth in its rule that stops bench clearing brawls, and they give people 10-game suspensions and fine them 10 games worth of salary. At the lunch, Laura was kind of frustrated. Our lunch wasn't that good either. I don't know if that had anything to do with that, but she said, you know, hockey is only a game. It's not a war, especially for 5-year-olds. Now, in the technical sense, Laura was right, but you know, what has happened to sportsmanship? To paraphrase Paul Simon, where have you gone sportsmanship? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you because it's gone. How many of you have heard of Jeffrey Lang? Jeffrey Lang is the picture of today's sportsmanship. He is the face of the rowdy fan. If you remember a couple of years ago at Giant Stadium, there was a snowstorm, and they did not clean out Giant Stadium. They left the snow in Giant Stadium. Giants are playing the San Diego Chargers. It's a Saturday afternoon nationally televised game. It's on NBC. Jeffrey Lang had his picture circulated nationally like this, throwing a snowball at the field. That was the game, the snowball game, where ice balls were pelting the field, and the equipment manager for the San Diego Chargers got hit in the head and was beaten by an ice ball. And while he had his back turned to the stands, and he was carried off, he had a head injury. Jeffrey Lang happened to be caught by photographers and was arrested eventually, tracked down at work no less, because of the picture. Serious damage was done to him. He became the face of rowdyism. Now, the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority didn't do a good job of clearing snow from the stands, and many people tailgated. It was about 20 degrees, and there was a lot of drinking, and the Giants were out of it. It was a Saturday afternoon game. There was snow under the seats. People had cold feet. Alcohol was too intoxicating a combination with the snow. And the Giant fans were frustrated with their team. Their team wasn't very good. They were going home after the game. So the fans, who are the so-called 12 men, and there's a number 12 hanging in the rafters at the Seattle Kingdom where the Seattle Seahawks play, honoring the fans. The home fans are always encouraged to make the conditions for the opposing team inhospitable. And what they did on this day, they started throwing snowballs at the football game, and they injured somebody. Lang was arrested along with 200 others, but his picture was in the paper. But you know, snowballs at football games are nothing new. In 1972, while I was in high school, we were doing a local high school football game on the local 500-watt radio station, and my announcer got pelted with a snowball, and he was down. And that's how I got my start in radio, because I had to help out for 2 minutes, even though I was just there to keep the stats. I had to do two series of play-by-play, because this guy got hit in the eye. He eventually came back. Now, your fans, how many go to games? I would imagine, do you have any rights? Do you think you have any rights at games? I'll tell you, you do have some rights. You know, you can agitate as long as it's within reason. Robin Thicke, I don't know how many of you have heard of Robin Thicke. He's one of these guys at basketball games. How many of you have heard of Spike Lee? How many of you have heard of Jack Nicholson? Well, Robin Thicke is the Spike Lee and the Jack Nicholson in Washington. Now, he was a Washington Bullets season ticket holder at the U.S. Air Arena. When they moved downtown, or to Midtown Washington, they changed their name to the Wizards because their owner, Abe Pollin, said, I'm promoting violence. Bullets in Washington, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the crime rate in Washington, but it's rather high. It's the highest crime rate in the United States. So he decided his little piece was changing his name from the Bullets, which connoted violence, to the Wizards. Anyway, when they moved into the new MCI Center, the renamed Wizards wouldn't let Robin Thicke have his customary seat behind the bench of the opposing team, where he would heckle the